Welcome into Basketball by Association. My name is Association. That is the basketball man himself, Dr. Joel C. Cordes. Dr. Joel, I'd like to say hello, but let's not waste time. You want to talk some hoops?
Let's do it. This is the home office version of Basketball by Association. You can find us on Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes if you want the audio only flavor of this. If you want video, it's on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe over there. Let's do it.
It's the WFH version there for Mr. Cordes. So let's just briefly talk about the game that's literally happening right now as we're recording. A blowout's happening right now in Orlando. It's 101-75 in the fourth. Just to give you an idea where we're actually recording this in favor of the Magic, and the Magic about to pull even with that series. Joel, this series I thought from the very beginning was going to be star-studded and very entertaining, and I have been so right. It has been a close, competitive series this entire time. Joel, this series has kind of sucked, man. Like, this has not been a very good series so far, and it's not scores versions. It's not like banging against each other's version. It's just not been the best series that I thought it would be. I don't even know if maybe I just had a misread on that one, but this hasn't been very good.
Yeah, two teams that have been very good defensively all year. Cleveland has been a little bit better offensively, but was kind of scuffling coming into the playoffs. Orlando had run out of a little bit of fuel at the end there too. But yeah, game one, 97-83 Cavs, 96-86 in game two. Cleveland wins that. Game three, the Magic won 21-83 over the Cavaliers. And as you said, game four is looking to be another Magic blowout. It was close at halftime. And then third quarter, the Magic held Cleveland to 10 total points. That to me has been the biggest thing, is that, yeah, both teams can defend. They both have played hard. But there's been these massive power outages for the opponent. And it's been the road team where it just becomes it's missing open shots, but then it's ugly basketball to even get to those open shots. And as you said, you and I were kind of looking at this as like a sleeper type of series, and instead it's just been a snooze fest.
I could not imagine thinking that about a series that's about to be tied 2-2. That'd be that boring. Like we have an even series, but it's just been like, like it's.
I will say this: the entertaining part for me did come in game three when it was close early on, and all of a sudden Orlando hit that first three, and it felt like not just the first three in the game for the Magic. It felt as if it had been the first three in the entire series. There was just this weight that fell off their shoulders, and I think it was Franz Wagner who hit it. But then, what do you know? All of a sudden, the lid came off the basket. The crowd in Orlando got into it. And there was this sense that, okay, they're young. They're wet behind the ears. They got punched when they were up in Cleveland. But you know what? This is the 4-5 matchup. Anybody can hang with anybody in this series matchup. And it happened. And you saw Orlando come to life and all of a sudden make a much better showing of themselves to remind people why they got here in the first place. And they really did play well in that third game. They ran the Cavs out of the gym and gave them a taste of their own medicine. So in that way, it was fun. But you're right. Can we please get a competitive game from start to finish? That would be nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to salvage the series for me, obviously, because the first four have been so bleh for the most part. But like, it would make me feel like a little better, right? Like a little better about what this 5 games, I guess now at least 6.
Right now, Cleveland is halfway through the second half. They've scored 16 total points. They're 4 of 16 from downtown for the entire game. It's that type of crap fest that we've seen from Cleveland last game here in Orlando, and then the Magic, the 2 games up in Cleveland. So it's not just good defense. It's that. And in Cleveland's case, like, you have Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell on your team. You have Max Strus, who has completely forgotten how to hit a three-pointer, and Georges Niang is not too far behind. Like, those were the guys that were brought in to take care of this problem for Cleveland, which was a lack of outside shooting outside of Lauri Markkanen in the past. And it's just not getting done. And we're starting to get back to some of those Donovan Mitchell playoff struggle type of questions, which has been a thing over the last few seasons.
Joe, we're going to go all over the place when it comes to the series. I'm not going to necessarily go just by the scheduled stuff, because I think the next one I really want to talk about, look at your Minnesota Timberwolves, about to sweep out the Phoenix Suns in their own building. Now, I know you're going to say the typical coach speak, like it's not over till it's over. You got to
Mhm.
win it at their place again if you want to get the sweep and blah blah blah. But this is a team that you were very worried about matching up
Yes,
against,
very
and
worried.
on the verge for 2 straight years is Phoenix of being embarrassed out of the playoffs early. First, let's talk about Minnesota, and then we'll sort of talk about what's this sort of meaning for Phoenix and what they look like.
For Minnesota coming into it, the big question was going to be the coaching adjustment and then the adjustment of their youngest players. You knew that the veterans would be ready to go, but Anthony Edwards especially struggled against the Phoenix Suns.
36 last night, man. He has been,
Yeah.
and he's, by the way, not been the greatest this series overall.
No, because they've done a good job of loading up on Ant. They show him a wall. They in the regular season, the Suns played a very tight shell concept. And Anthony Edwards, he's got a little bit of an ego to him. That's part of what makes him great. He's a humble kid with his teammates, but when you challenge him on the court as an opponent, we've seen this, whether it's against his idol, Kevin Durant, whether it's been chirping and then smiling with Bradley Beal. Anthony Edwards wants to put his head down and run through a brick wall, but he could not do that during the regular season. And I think it took those games of getting embarrassed, and Minnesota got embarrassed. Phoenix was the only Western Conference team that did this to them all year, for them to be able to go back, and they had a lot of stuff on tape to be able to work through to say, we cannot do this. This does not work. Edwards, you have to get the defense to collapse on you, but you can't fight it. You got to make the right pass. And it's not for Edwards being a ball hog or anything like that. It's that sense that he's got to put the team on his back when they're struggling. So it's been very helpful that Karl-Anthony Towns has come out. And even though he's been in foul trouble, he's shot the ball really, really well from downtown. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is having the best series, probably the best couple of games stretch of his career, and it's happening in the playoffs. But he has become such a valuable 3-and-D guy for them off the bench this season. That ability to stretch the floor, Jaden McDaniels has shook off some late season rust, has also opened things up ever so slightly, and now it's Edwards making that right play. But really, when it comes to Minnesota, it's their defense, right? That's what got them here in the first place. The offense has been hit or miss all year, but Minnesota, you've seen them lock in defensively. They're flying around, but still within this team concept. And you see the cracks with the Suns, where they just don't have the chemistry to move the ball on the fourth, fifth pass, to work through the third or fourth rotation defensively. Stuff breaks down after the initial effort at it, and the Suns have played hard, but this is where you get into those issues of too many new guys. They shuffled the deck at the deadline. Their stars were never all healthy together in the first place, and this was the first year of trying to put these stars together. So we all had big hopes for the Suns, but one of these teams has been together for a couple of years now and has been building towards this, and the other one is just trying to figure it out when they're here against what would have been the number one team in the West.
KD said after the game that they were getting booed there in Phoenix, and he said, "Hope that ignites us." It's like, if that's what you need to ignite you down 3-0, partner, you're in some due. What we do need to see is that killer instinct from Minnesota. We do need to see them sort of to cut off the team from their legs, know that they're on the throat, just get it done. Don't have to waste time to get back to Minnesota to end this thing. Just go ahead and get done with it. And I'm surprised it has the potential of being a sweep tomorrow, Sunday. That is.
I am too. I thought this was going to be a classic 7-game series for sure. But if you are the Phoenix Suns, I will say this. Do not panic even if you get swept. Look across the court at the Minnesota Timberwolves and realize that you are them just 1 year behind. Because last year, Minnesota, had this huge experiment with Rudy Gobert, but Towns was never healthy throughout the whole year. And Edwards looked a little bit lost at times, even though he had a great season 2 years before. It was all of a sudden like he regressed. They weren't working well with D'Angelo Russell. Then you bring in Mike Conley at the deadline. They shuffled a few other pieces around the deadline. And they did not play well down the end of the stretch, and they kind of went out mutely last year. But with a full training camp and with health, you saw the Timberwolves take advantage of the vision behind what this roster was supposed to be. That can be very much for Phoenix next year. Couple of tweaks here and there, a chance to get healthy, chance to get the right guys in there and adjust the scheme a little bit. And Phoenix could very well become what we thought they were going to be this season.
Now onto the series of the postseason so far, the Knicks and the 76ers. Philadelphia pulls within 2-1 of New York. Joel
Mhm.
Embiid goes for 51. I think he scored 54, though, in the third quarter, it felt like, in that
It
game, because
did.
the Knicks should have – Knicks arguably could be in a 3-0 seat right now. Maybe
Mhm.
should be, had not Embiid not only gone nuts, but literally did about one of the dirtiest plays he's done as a professional basketball player.
Yeah.
Did not get tossed for that, which is bizarre to me. It's nowhere near a basketball
Especially
play to
because
be
they reviewed it, right? It's not like the old days where it's like, yeah, they made a mistake and on second
immediately
reading.
went to
No,
the
they
review. I'm
reviewed
like,
it.
what's not dirty? What's not dismissive of a game when you're on the
Yeah.
ground pulling at the leg? The NBA has been so forward thinking as far as you can't get under players when they're up in the air. You got to protect the shooter, so to speak. So to have someone literally not just be under someone, but to be actively pulling them down, bizarre to
Well,
me that
and
that
and and you can't tell me that if the situation were reversed and it was Mitchell Robinson who, heaven forbid, touched Joel Embiid and did that and didn't wash his hands first, like you can't tell me that he wouldn't have been ejected for that.
Mitchell Robinson would be on the next flight out of to Calcutta. Like, he's not coming back to the league. They just won't allow it. That's the kind of
Yeah.
disparity I thought was there. That was still a winnable game, though, for the Knicks at the time when that happened. And had you had a not white hot Joel Embiid in the game, because he should have been put out of the game, things could have been different in that game. Regardless, it's 2-1 in favor of New York. They play again on Sunday to see if the Knicks can take 3-1, or if Joel Embiid can keep company and even a thing. I think, honestly, I'm happy that the Knicks are up 2-1. They obviously got the 2 at home. I'm not worried about this series as much as I thought, because it took a 51-point outburst and an insane third quarter when the Knicks were up big at the half, and it took a crazy man effort to get Philadelphia back into the game, and a little home cooking for the refs there to keep the big star into the game. That I'm not too worried about the Knicks in this series. I still think the Knicks have shown to be so far the better team, and that's without Jalen Brunson being King Kong Bundy on top of everything.
Well, and the Knicks survive a game where, well, I guess they didn't survive because they lost, but they they stomach a game where Dante DiVincenzo really struggled, and he's been super helpful for them.
There, yeah.
They get 20 points.
Yeah, especially
He was huge. They get 20 points out of Josh Hart, though. They get 14 out of Isaiah Hartenstein. You're waiting for somebody off the bench, whether it's Deuce McBride. He's had a couple of big games. Bojan Bogdanovic has had some rumblings here or there, but they're going to need one of those guys, I think, to have a 15 to 20 point game off the bench. And DiVincenzo is going to have to shoot better. Philadelphia, I still feel like they have not reached their potential yet either. Remember, they're reacclimating Joel Embiid after yet another lengthy absence. There's a lot of weapons with that group. That starting lineup is really, really solid when you have Kelly Oubre and Tobias Harris as your third and fourth wheel around Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. Plus, you get Kyle Lowry in the mix, and you can bring off the bench Batum and Paul Reed and Campaign, who had a nice little burst for them, 11 points in 16 minutes, and Buddy Hield, who only played 4 minutes. There are a handful of other guys, KJ Martin, Mo Bamba, DeAnthony Melton, who all could do something in this series. So while you're confident, and I think the Knicks are the better team here, they seem to have more cohesion. Philadelphia has some upside. They have depth. They are very well coached with Nick Nurse. And I would feel a lot more comfortable if I were the Knicks, if I could have put away that game 3. To leave the door open here 2-1, this is one of those series that you and I talked about where, yeah, it's probably going to be really competitive throughout. We could see it going 7 games. And I still kind of feel that. Like, I feel Philadelphia they got some punches left to throw here.
I still think it could go 7 games. I just don't. I would not be. The bad thing is if the Knicks came back and lost game 5. Like, if they lost game 5 back
at
in
home,
then I would be. Then I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Even if the Knicks were up, 3-1 at the time, that was a chance to sort of put it away. And I'm not so mad at them they didn't put the game away, because, like, Joel Embiid had, sometimes guys just go white hot, right? Jalen Brunson had a great game. He shot the best he shot overall in this series. He's had. He shot like 15% from 3 in the first 2 games. Like, it's just not quite the same as he was in game 3. You'd love to have had that effort end up to be able to win, but then again, the refs be cheating. So,
Jalen Brunson gets to his spots the way that Julius Randle wants to get to his spots.
Okay, I can see
And
that.
Brunson is better at it, despite being, 70 pounds less than Julius Randle normally is. It's funny that they're so similar in a lot of ways of what they do on the court, just different positions, but similar strength profiles. And Brunson has been so fun to watch for the Knicks, and he fits in with what they do. The guy that is already, I think, fitting into the background, and this is by design, but I don't want Knicks fans to forget, because I think he can be one of the all-time favorite Knicks, especially if they can make a run over the next couple of years. OG Anunoby, seeing him in a Knicks uniform, and I loved him up in Toronto, but what he is doing defensively for this team and the grit that he adds to be able to then pair with Hartenstein and Mitch Robinson and Josh Hart, oh my goodness, that's such a nice...
It's hand in glove. It really is hand in glove in this system. Mm-hmm. It really, really is. And I hope it's able to sort of propel this team deep into the playoffs. Yeah.
Anunoby looks like he could have been the starting Knicks small forward, back in 97 too for the Knicks, or any of those Patrick Ewing years.
How do you know
he definitely could have been there.
Yeah. How do you know he wasn't back there?
Well, I remember this Larry Johnson guy, ambling up and down the court. With
he's a big old fella, though. Come on now, it's a different. Yeah. It's a big lumber.
No shade on LJ. I always wanted him to be healthier than he was up in New York, because he was such a beast in Charlotte, and that's not quite the guy that they got in New York. But
he had a pretty good run in New York.
Earlier, he did, and they love him for good reason.
But there probably could have been more to that had he been just excuse me, a little bit better shape. Okay, let's go back to the West Coast, where what do you make of Dallas and Los Angeles? Because for the first time that I was paying, and I didn't watch a ton of Clippers, to be honest with you, this year, but they kind of looked out of sync in that game. And Russell Westbrook's never been ejected from a playoff game. Say whatever you want about him. He has never been ejected from a playoff game.
Is that true? That's crazy. True. I did not know that.
Not in a playoff game. Just a bizarre, crazy, rough foul there on Luka. Kawhi Leonard's hanging on the rim after a dunk. And granted, that wasn't a huge deal, so to speak, right? But just they didn't sort of feel like that they were in sorts, right? And that doesn't mean it speaks on the entire series. In that game, though, they just felt. It very much felt like Dallas was the much better, much more on point team in Game 3. I don't know what it means the rest of the way, but it was sort of interesting to sort of watch that Clippers team kind of come unglued a little bit.
It's a hard series to fully get the pulse of, because the Clippers just demolished Dallas in Game 1. Granted, it's in LA, but it's not like the Clippers typically has been one of those home court advantages in the playoffs or whatever that you're really fearful of. But the Clippers don't have Kawhi Leonard. The Mavericks play as bad of a first three quarters as you will ever see in the playoffs. Just ask Orlando or Cleveland. They couldn't do anything, and yet they come back and they tie. They bring it to within 12 by the time the game is over, and it looked okay. Then Kawhi comes back, and we're all thinking, all right, if the Clippers played that well against Dallas, and now you get Kawhi on top of that, it's good night. Mavericks didn't play very well to begin Game 2, and then suddenly take control. They win by 3. Then they keep the momentum going here in Game 3. And again, Kawhi Leonard plays in that one. It's, I guess, the things that stand out to me. Game 3, Kawhi Leonard 9 points, Paul George 7 points.
Oh yeah, they were not productive. What did I see? Like 7 made baskets or something between their big three. That's not good. That's not nearly enough.
Terrence Mann 2 points. So that's your starting lineup. And then 19 turnovers. Meanwhile, for Dallas, Luka's 22, 10 and 9. Kyrie's 21, 6 and 4. Those aren't even great games for those two guys. They're solid games, but it's not world-beating games. Luka was 7 of 25 from the field, 3 of 14 from downtown. So, yeah, you do get the sense that it's Dallas played well enough in those two games, but the Clippers have these opportunities and are just stumbling.
But also, to be fair, the Clippers, I think it was I think the Clipper has 7 technicals in Game 3. Like, that was an 11-point game. That's a huge difference. It's huge. Like, this was not a 30-point blowout where guys were just like getting chippy just to leave. It was a chippy game where Dallas, with that Kyrie fella, was the more level-headed team like out there, and the Clippers were just. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think
that's where you need somebody of the veterans to not feed into that.
Yes, somebody's got to be there. Russell Westbrook's been in the league for 400 years. Like that,
right?
Not great. He's the high head of everybody. But
these are
he's
all
pushing refs. He might be suspended.
Yeah, this is a veteran laden team. Somebody should be stepping up in there and calming everybody down.
Joe, he's pushing refs. Like, I don't know if the NBA will suspend him, but like they can make the case. They could very
100%.
Make the case.
Yeah, 100%. And here again, it's a double standard because if it's a role player, Russ is right on the border of this. Yeah, he's a notable name, but he's living off of his past now at this point. Role players don't get away with that. Stars every once in a while do.
Hey, can I ask you something as we move forward back to the East? Why Miami got in Miami like that? Like, why? What is up with the Miami Heat? Why do they have to go and score 400 threes against Boston to even the series? And I do find it funny that, a sweep could happen like I think tonight. Don't the Lakers play tonight?
Yeah.
The Lakers could get swept tonight, but Boston and New England just play. Boston and Miami are playing Game 3. But regardless, what do you? I don't even know what to say about Miami anymore. Like, it's just the great enigma, and like there's just no one like Eric Spoelstra. There's just no one like Pat Riley when they're putting a game plan together, putting a team together. Like, and granted, record 3 numbers is not every day, but to have the dudes that could do that on the road in a big time atmosphere without your guy, I mean, I'd really like to see someone put them into the dirt for good, but no one seems to know how to put them in the dirt for good.
No Jimmy Butler, no Terry Rozier. So you're missing not your 2 best scorers, because we got to factor Tyler Hero in there and Bam Adebayo, but 2 of your top 4 scorers. I'll say this about Eric Spoelstra, and I have said this before, but it's been a long time since I brought this point up. Eric Spoelstra does not necessarily coach to win regular season games. He coaches to teach, and he coaches to coach during regular season games. That's why you will see them in a random January game all of a sudden throw out this, a crazy zone look, and they'll work on it for a quarter, or there'll be all sorts of different matchups, and he shuffles the starting lineup constantly, although some of that's by necessity with injuries because it is an older team. But different guys are in, they get different looks, and Spo is not one of those guys who picks his 8 and just rolls with that the entire season. He is constantly coaching up his role players and constantly getting them ready for these moments. And then they go out there and they just see what happens. And, Boston got cold down the stretch. The Celtics actually, I felt, had most of that momentum through the first half. Miami was hanging around, but it really felt like Boston was just one punch away from being able to end the Heat in Game 2. But that's exactly what it felt like last year, too, in Milwaukee.
Boston, this is a fascinating thing to pay attention to. Boston hasn't had to really fight a lot this year.
No, they've had few close games.
They have been blowing people out from night 1 in the NBA, and it has been just a train run on the entire league for the majority of the year. So if a team stays with them, a team might be able to make them nervous. Granted, their young guys in Boston aren't young guys, so to speak, anymore, especially when it comes to playoff minutes. But still, if you don't have that muscle built up over the season, Miami could still 2 or 3 games, and who knows? Once you get in their head that you can win, and you clearly did in their building, I mean, I'm fascinated for what this thing's going to look like coming up in Miami.
Boston better be ready to dig in and not try to out finesse this team, right? You've got the scores, you've got the firepower, but that's not just it. You're going to have to out execute and get to those 50-50 balls. If there's anything that speaks in favor for the Celtics, it's that Miami plays this magnificent game overall, but rebounds were even, assists were basically even, steals, turnovers, all basically even. The only big differentiator is that Miami shoots 23 of 43 from downtown.
Yeah.
Are they, the Miami Heat, sans Jimmy Butler and Terry Rozier, really going to be able to do that consistently? Probably not.
But they did it once and they stole a game.
Yes.
And once you get that in the mindset.
And this Heat team is one where, okay, they did that, but next game it could be something completely different, right? They win the rebounding battle the next time by a dozen, and that's the difference, or the turnover battle by 6, and that's the difference.
Miami's not a team that goes away from something that's working in that game. So if they start seeing that the three's going, they'll keep feeding it. If they see that any type of their game is working, they're not dumb. They're not just going to go away from it just for funsies' sake. Like, if it's working, figure out more stuff to get what's working going. And so we'll see if they get something working in game 3.
You saw those guys firsthand last year as a Knicks fan. Not to bring up the pain, but Miami just gave pain to the whole Eastern Conference last year. Obviously, you got no love for Boston. But if you are a Celtics fan, I dare you to put yourself in those dirty shoes for a second. How worried are you going into game 3 or looking at the rest of the series?
Big worried.
Even though you won 64 games and you're sitting in first place and you don't have any major injuries. Remember, last year, Milwaukee, they were dealing with Giannis issues and injuries. There was a little bit more to that story, but
big worried. Look, they're in it for world championships, not to try to get the world playoffs, the victories, and try to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, this is a team not far removed from the NBA Finals. Like, this team believes with its construction, and why not? The regular season has sort of shown they've been the best team in the regular season, clearly by far. But if I'm them, like, I get nervous. I get big nervous when a team comes into your building and stays with you, even though you've been able to blow other teams out, including you played really well against Miami in game 1.
Yeah.
Like, for them to come back like that and to get hot like that at one time and to steal one of the games in Boston. And granted, if you're up 2-1 going in game 4, or going to game 4 because they won one of the games in Miami and not in Boston, it's a little different. But if I'm a fan, sure, I'm worried about that. That's crazy. Like, you would expect that no matter who this 8 seed is, you should be able to push through them, especially when there's no Jimmy Butler and there's no Terry Rozier. Like, and Tyler Herro's not playing if you get what you've got going for you that Boston had against Miami, and you still lose that game at home, no matter how it happens, they can hit 53 still. You got to be like, no, this cannot be what starts to snowball. Because I think Miami, more than any other team in the league, is in the playoffs right now. It's a momentum type team. If things start going momentum wise their way, they've done it before. They've got the track history to show that they don't have to have everybody every night to be really good and to beat you. And that's frustrating.
Caleb Martin, 21 points in that game. Jaime Jaquez Jr., 14. Nikola Jovic, 11.
What you just
9
did.
And 6. 11, 9, and 6. So here you got these role players stepping up. We've seen Caleb Martin do this before in the playoffs. We've seen Jaquez Jr. do this during the regular season. Jovic has been a prospect who's gotten some run with them late in the year. But all of a sudden, those guys get plugged into a starting lineup. They're playing well. Tyler Hero has a good game. He struggled in game 1 against Boston a little bit, but and Bam Adebayo continues to be just like the constant for that group.
All right, let's move forward back to the West. OKC have a chance to go up 3-0 up on the New Orleans Pelicans. They're now back in New Orleans. Joe, I just think OKC overwhelms them. Like, I think they look overwhelming in their first couple of games. Granted, that's a tough building to play in if you're New Orleans. I totally get that, especially for playoff time. But New Orleans, I didn't think was a very strong playoff contender coming into this, no matter who their matchup was going to be. This one, this is a bad matchup. This is a bad matchup for I think this New Orleans team. So I'd be surprised if this thing went more than 5. This is kind of going the way I thought it would go.
I think New Orleans and Oklahoma City match up against each other uniquely because both teams are very, very long and interchangeable throughout the positions. The difference really is at the center spot where you've got Jonas Valanciunas, who's strong and ground bound and wants to play through the low post. And then you have, the human string being in Chet Holmgren, who can run down the floor and can face up. But yeah, he can light you up from downtown. And you're seeing just Oklahoma City. I called them the most dangerous team in the playoffs 3 weeks before the playoffs even began. And we've been talking about them through the second half of the season. The starting five is so locked in together, and they've got so many different weapons to bring off the bench. Young legs, they keep coming in waves. Mark Daigneault, the head coach there, he played 9 guys in the first quarter alone of game 2. He played 11.
9? Did he play 9?
He played 9 in the first quarter. He played 11 guys in game 1. So they're coming in waves. And this is where you get a sense of almost Miami Heat basketball, in that these guys are ready. They're ready to jump into the different spots, the different roles, whether it's 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 17 minutes off the bench. Different guys in the starting lineup step up, and they run all sorts of crazy things because they've been working on this through the year. I see a lot of similarities between Spo and Mark Daigneault in Oklahoma City. So, New Orleans, I think they would have, this is really obvious, they would have a much better chance if Zion Williamson was available, because then they can come down and they can force the issue offensively due to his sheer athleticism. But Oklahoma City's length and their defensive pressure and their ability to then turn that defense into offense, that would still be there whether Zion was on the floor or not. So you're right. I think OKC has shown why they're the number 1 seed, but let's also recognize that the number 2 seed, excuse me. Or no, they were number 1. This is got confusing at the end of the year.
It was a 3-way tie for number 1.
Yeah. Only 8 games separated OKC and New Orleans, though, on the regular season is where I was going with that. So New Orleans has been a good team, and I think they steal 1, maybe even 2 at home. But
you think they can think they can steal 2 games?
I think they can steal 2 games. I don't see them winning in OKC, and the one concern is that the Pelicans weren't all that good at home this year. But I do think getting a playoff crowd behind you, it's possible, but I'll say they can get 1. They can get 1.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Let's go. We got 2 more series to talk about real quick. Let's go to Milwaukee, Indiana. This thing has lived up to the billing as far as to these 2 teams just not being big fans of each other. Now, it doesn't have all the technical fouls and the ejections of what we saw for LA and Dallas, but we saw another fine outing for these 2. It was last night. There was the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was last night. So nice overtime matchup between those 2. Indiana leads that series 2-1 now, and ever since we were talking about Milwaukee, proving everybody wrong and winning the game 1 and proving that they were going to be it, Indiana looks like they want to take control of this series. So it's do you think this is Indiana's to take?
Oh yeah, because now Damian Lillard dealing with an Achilles sprain. We don't even know what his status is going to be for game 4. If he's unable to play, the Bucks are in just an absolute world of hurt. Lillard had 28 points in game 3 in the overtime game, but was 6 of 20 from the floor. And they said second half that really he was being used as a decoy. This was going to be a bad matchup for the Bucks, even if they had Giannis. The Pacers, that we talked about that quite a bit, but you take Giannis out of the equation, and Indiana's offense was already better than Milwaukee's offense. Yeah. The Bucks had a better defense than the Pacers simply because the Pacers were that bad defensively all year, and the Bucks, they got better. The Bucks did get better defensively under Doc Rivers, but who is the guy who makes the Bucks defense go? It's Giannis, right? Tyrese Halliburton gets that shot off, that floater, to win the game for the Pacers. You can't tell me that he's going to get that good of a look if Giannis is there patrolling the paint down the stretch. That becomes a different look, a different shot. So Milwaukee's advantages were not better than Indiana's advantages, and that was even if Giannis was there. And now with him gone, you don't have anybody in that Milwaukee starting lineup outside of Damian Lillard who can create their own shot. Chris Middleton is a play finisher, not a play starter. And if you take Lillard out of that, you know, Pat Beverly, Jay Crowder look like absolute shells of themselves, although Beverly has played a little bit better than Crowder has. Crowder's been almost unplayable down the stretch of the season here. Nobody off that bench is giving them anything of a push. They had 6 points total from the bench unit. 6 points total in an overtime game. They even got extra time. And they're just not getting anything from that group, whether it's Pat Connaughton, Malik Beasley, AJ Green. Somebody has got to step up because Chris Middleton is struggling with injuries too. So you're telling me a team that already was a little bit out of sorts chemistry-wise now is missing their MVP. Then it's going to be missing their multi-time all-star. And they're going to go against a team that wants to play fast. This is a recipe for disaster for the Bucks down the rest of the way, unless the Pacers just get so sloppy, which we've seen happen before, or so bad defensively that they leave the door open.
Next time we talk, Milwaukee will be out of this playoffs. I
think so.
Yeah. At least we will talk after talk about Doc Rivers blowing another 3 games to 1 lead, right? There's a saving grace for Doc Rivers fans out there that are still holding on to the 2008 title like it's the only thing that ever happened in the NBA. Okay, final series. It's the best series. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Los Angeles Lakers. 1 game away from getting swept by the Denver Nuggets again in this year playoffs. By the way, also haven't been beating them in the regular season either. Have the Lakers. This is
10 straight times now.
It is a really, really bad matchup apparently for Los Angeles. But here's the good note, Mr. Joel C. Cordes. If you are a Lakers fan, Darvin Ham says no changes to the starting lineup. Going to keep everybody the same. So that's the good thing, is that we should make no adjustments to the starting lineup. And Joel, I don't know. This one doesn't surprise me that it's been so one-sided. I was only a little concerned that Denver may be a little fat and happy after last year's playoffs, and who knows how hot they would come into this year's playoff. Maybe they'd warm into it. But I should have paid attention more to what they did to them in the regular season. Also, that this just seems to be a team that Jokic and company really do not want on their same court. Like they are really, really, really good against them. Any chance Lakers get 1?
Yes, I think the Lakers can get 1. You know, they're 5.
Gotta happen now.
Right. Yeah, there you go. 5 of 27 in game 3. They got 12 points total between the point guard platoon of D'Angelo Russell, who was scoreless, and D'Lo is fantastic in game 2, but scoreless in game 3. Spencer Dinwiddie gives them 8 points. Gabe Vincent gives them 4 points. You can point the finger
at
the role players.
That's good, right? That's really good. Really
you can point the finger at the fact that like Taurean Prince, he had 7 and Rui Hachimura had 5. So you put all of the eggs in the Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and in this game, Austin Reeves basket. Previously, it was D'Lo and not so much Reeves. So it's been a disjointed scoring attack. But I think there's also the eyeball test is showing something to me, and that the time to let LeBron James carry an entire team and that he's going to be the eraser of all sins is gone. And Anthony Davis has been good, but Anthony Davis can be played to a draw by Jokic. Everything that Davis brings to the table, Jokic can neutralize and at least make it palatable enough. That's not to say you can't still build a team around Anthony Davis, because this really is more his team than LeBron's. I'm not trying to kick unnecessary shade at LeBron. It just is. I watch LeBron and I watch the drives and the threes, and we're past the point where you go, he's going to make it. And then you're surprised when he doesn't. He puts up a shot and it feels like most other players who are like, no, that doesn't look like a great shot. And lo and behold, it doesn't go in. And again, I'm not blaming him for the role players not hitting any shots, but I do think, it's.
You go back to game 2, right? When he was wide open for about a minute and a half in the last 20 seconds of that game. Could have won the game for them, or at least put them ahead. You see what happens in the game. Instead, Murray comes down the other end, puts the basket in. Now they're up 2-0 in that series. And then you sort of watch the press conferences afterward, and the fact that Anthony Davis, who's played well in this series, he's probably done as much as you could probably expect from him outside of having a Joel Embiid output one of these nights. just be frustrated. Like I love the final sort of the question that got him out where he was just done, which was, so what'd you see on that final play, or what happened in that final play? It's like Murray made a shot, and then just slams down the microphone and walks away, because he knew that had to be the game that they were going to steal, and that was probably going to start pushing their momentum one way or the other. And then Denver just sort of took the energy and the momentum from that and did not let up. Even though they didn't blow out Los Angeles in Game 3, that was still a pretty competitive game throughout the large chunk of it. Still, though, Denver just... I had a friend I used to play racquetball with all the time, right? His name is David. Still is David, actually. And I would all the time lose to him. Like, not a single victory. Many times I would get the match point on him or game point on him, and I'd be up like 4 or 5 points. I would not be consciously thinking about it, but he'd come back and beat me every single time. And there was just something in my head, and I don't know, I can't consciously tell you what it was, that did not let me win that game. It did not let me get over that hump. Did I choke every time? Yeah. But how? I don't know. I got up like 11-4 on him a couple of times. Like, I'm going to take this over. Don't know what it is. It feels like that kind of is what it is with the Lakers. You had the wide open chance to basically or potentially win it in Game 2. You played well enough in Game 3 to be in it.
They were up at halftime again in Game 3.
And there's just something that won't let them get over the Denver Nuggets. And I'm not quite sure what that is.
Well, and the scary thing is, I pointed out that the Lakers hit 5 of 27, and so they probably won't do that again. But in the win, the Nuggets were 5 of 28 from downtown.
Yeah, like the Nuggets did.
They probably won't do that again. I want to give big props in this series to Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr., the front line up there with Jokic, because a lot of times we talk about Jokic and we talk about Murray, and rightly so. But both of those two guys have grown into their roles so much. And Aaron Gordon, we saw this last year through the playoffs and through the championship run, the ability to play tough, to fill the dunker spot, to be their defensive leader in a lot of situations. But he had 29 and 15. Aaron Gordon was a guy in Orlando who was the featured scorer and was probably miscast in that role. But he really stepped up to be the leading scorer in Game 3. And Michael Porter Jr., to me, it's everything with body language is different. Last year, he was not confident. He was tentative. He would shoot shots, and it was like he was trying to see if they would go in. He was trying to finesse them in. Michael Porter Jr. right now, I see him running off of screens. He's getting to spots. He's stepping into his jump shot. There's just that body language that he expects it to go in. And more importantly, 20 points, 10 boards, 3 assists. He's finding other ways to get involved, and I've seen him be more active defensively. So as he has taken that step forward this year, I think that's really helped to mask the fact that they don't have a Bruce Brown, they don't have a Jeff Green, and that sort of thing off the bench. The bench has been just good enough all year with Peyton Watson, Reggie Jackson, and Chris Brown. That's basically been it for them. It's been just good enough, but there's so much chemistry and cohesion with that starting 5. And there again, it's kind of like looking at the Lakers is kind of like looking at the Suns. All sorts of talent, all sorts of depth. The problem is not all that depth is available right now. Very little of that depth all got to play together throughout the year. And they're not on the same tight string that a Denver is or a Miami is or even an Oklahoma City or Minnesota are right now. There is a difference between those teams that get there, are healthy, locked in, and everybody knows their job. You can see it when you're looking for it.
Yeah, and it's a different kind of locked in when you get to the playoffs. You can tell who's there and who early on and who's just sort of floundering to try to find their footing somewhere.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to tell so far in the first few games. All right, Joel, that's going to do it for us. Next time we talk, the Lakers will be out, and so will Milwaukee. Anybody else you want to predict real quick to be out?
I mean, I should have been able to say Orlando, right? But I guess we're saying New Orleans will be out by the next time we talk to.
All right. That's at least 3. That's almost half the playoffs.
Did we say the Suns? Because I think they're
I'll say the Suns. You don't want to say it because you don't want to jinx it, but I'll say the Suns will be out. How's that? Yeah. Good. All right. That's
good. That'll be half the field.
Then we will be down to half the field. Joel, say goodbye to the good people.
Goodbye, good people. This has been Basketball by Association. Again, find us Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, or YouTube. Like, share, subscribe on all of those. We will see you next time.
Goodbye.